behind me. There's not much to give up. I like simple, not complicated. 'Cause I'm a small town kid driven by rock music and some honky tonk.
Sophomore year in high school, the silent one. The kid who never talked in class, let alone an FFA meeting. This was me in 10th grade. Yep. I barely even smiled. But that all changed quite rapidly when I was asked to give a committee report at our chapter meeting. It was a typically dull task for a standing room only event until now. Racking my brain, my initial thought, do something with music. I scanned my iTunes library and searched for what seemed like hours until I found a few songs that might have worked. Maybe this one.
All the small things, true care, truth brings.
A little too fast. Maybe this one.
I told her way up yonder past the caution light. There's a
Not quite what I'm looking for. And then it hit me. The inescapable jam on every radio station during that time was One Hot Track, and when my iPod stopped on it, I knew I'd hit the jackpot. I wrote new lyrics, practiced by myself in the bedroom, and watched as the days flew by. Our meeting quickly approached, and I found myself confronting reality. Mr. Quiet, no smile, Vince Pellegrini was going to rap in front of everyone. My head would swim every time it crossed my mind. I would be silent no longer. Ready or not, the meeting came, and moments before it started, I sought support and guidance from my friends, asking, should I carry through with this? The prospect of failure burned bright in my mind as my name was called. With an auditorium of 500 people, all eyes fixed on me, I desperately wanted to run out of the door and act like I was never asked to get out in front, to try something that would make me look different. My hands poured sweat, and I was nearly panting. I was breathing so hard. I wanted the chapter president to have everyone look away and not watch me. Each step to the front of the room was like a drum in my ears, sounding my march to doom. I knew I couldn't run. Nope. I had to make it happen. With every last shred of courage that I can muster, members had them blue and gold jackets, shoes with the shine. They had the whole chapter looking so fine, so fine. They hit the flow. Next thing you know, members go vote, 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 vote. Then black dress slacks in the ag department bands, they turned around and gave that big gavel a smack. Hey, they hit the flow. Next thing you know, members go vote, 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 vote. Clearly, I do not possess the lyrical artistry of Flowrider, but that's missing the point. Thinking back to this day makes me realize how pivotal that series of choices was and how much they transformed my life. Prior to, I was the quiet kid who never smiled. After, I was set to be on the course of who I am now. So why did that one experience make such a difference? Frankly, I was tired of being the quiet kid who no one expected anything from. A voice had been nagging somewhere inside of my head, and when I finally listened to it, I knew. I had to challenge myself to look at who I was and who I wanted to be. So I did. Although petrified out of my mind that day, I made a choice to let my guard down and not care what people would think of this skinny sophomore trying to rap. I made a choice to defy people's expectations of me. I made a choice to be vulnerable and accept what came my way. Success or failure. As the years passed, I kept coming upon this idea of vulnerability. Vulnerability allows us to grow and become our best selves, to leave behind the person we know and become the person we want to be. In order to experience a life of vulnerability, we must do two things. We must first understand why we should be vulnerable, and second, embrace vulnerability. So what does it mean to be vulnerable? The dictionary tells us it is being capable of being wounded or hurt, a feeling of being exposed. Harsh, but true, these definitions are correct. To be vulnerable, we have to let our guard down and be willing to be exposed. I learned this lesson this past December. Jackie and I visited the members of the Morgan Hill Live Oak chapter, and they showed me the power of being vulnerable. Our night was filled with Johnny Rockets, insanely good hot chocolate, creating mayhem with potato guns, and staying up until 2 in the morning talking about life. During that time, I got to know one of the officers, Steven. And when I first met Steven, I knew he would be one person that I could not forget. He had a great sense of humor, was social, outgoing, and was a real momentum builder. Everyone enjoyed life more when Steven was around. Steven and I kept finding ourselves constantly in conversation, talking about everything. FFA, high school, food, family, sports, you name it, this dude rocked. After the chapter visit, Steven and I kept in contact. And as time passed, I found out more about him. During one particular conversation, Steven told me something that I found interesting. He told me that before Jackie and I arrived in Morgan Hill, he was thinking about not being himself. He was going to keep his guard up, not show his personality, not be as social as he usually was, and be totally different from who he usually is. Steven told me he was worried about what Jackie and I would think of him, worried that we wouldn't like him or would judge him. As I recall that night, I remember thinking the exact opposite. Steven was hilarious, brought life to the night, and made part of that experience memorable. Steven made a choice to be vulnerable. At times like Steven, we were all afraid to show who we really are. I sure am glad Steven chose to be vulnerable and let us in. Choosing to be vulnerable can bring so much good into our lives. Shallow acquaintances become wholesome, lifelong friends. Seemingly mundane experiences become filled with purpose. Our lives are enriched, and our best selves are closer to our grasp. It was once said, when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, to take chances, and to risk our pride, that is when we manifest in our own glory. Vulnerability makes all the difference. So how do we embrace it? The answer to this came at the start of my senior year in high school. High school is crazy. 4 years of friendships, relationships, passing tests, Friday night football games, and endless FFA events. I loved my time at Galt High School. It gave me an opportunity to have fun, travel, develop quality relationships, and get prepared for the future. After my attempt at rapping, I began to steadily step out of my comfort zone. I opened up myself to coaching, help, and advice. I let my friends see the real me. Fast forward to my senior year in high school, and you couldn't even recognize sophomore Vince. I was ASB rally coordinator, chapter officer, region officer, and senior year, as I saw it, was going to be epic. As the first day of school neared, our chapter officer team met to plan some events, and our advisor, Mr. White, casually mentioned he wanted to discuss with us a personal growth plan for the rest of the year. I remember thinking to myself, sitting anxiously in the ag department, wondering how I could grow. I was not even sure what that word meant. I was on top of the world. The next thing I knew, my name was called. I walked into Mr. White's room, we sat down and joked for a few minutes, laughing about some funny moments that occurred at our back-to-school barbecue. As the tone got more serious, we dissected the event and talked about ways to improve the whole experience. I began to get nervous again because I knew he wasn't far from getting to the real heart of the matter. Finally, he asked me, Vince, what do you think is the biggest area for growth for you this next year? Biggest? Like there were multiple areas for me to grow? I reflected on the question, thinking about what I had done so far. Here it was wrapping up high school with an impressive list of accomplishments under my belt. Senior year would close out just like I had planned, and I was a respected leader and student on our campus. And then it hit me. I was becoming so wrapped up in titles and accomplishments, I was losing sight of why I did any of this in the first place. Here I was at a critical point in my life, thinking about what was next on the to accomplish list. As I talked out this quandary with Mr. White, he helped me see that accomplishment pales in comparison to growth. That what we learn and who we become is far worth more than any trophy. I recognized then that in order to grow, I had to wholeheartedly embrace vulnerability as a daily choice and not as this one-time rap gig. I had to keep looking for ways to stay humble, let people into my heart, and really be my real self. In a time where I could have rested on my laurels and touted my achievements, I was challenged to live with humble vulnerability. The same thing can happen in your life. It's never too late. Whether you're the quasi-invisible freshman, the confident senior, or someone in between, you are in a prime spot to grab a hold of the wheel with both hands and steer yourself in a life enriched by vulnerability. So how will you do it? Here are some suggestions. First, try. Try out for that sports team you've always wanted to be a part of. Run for chapter office, not knowing if you will win. Ask a friend how they are doing and really listen to what they tell you. Be the dorky self you are inside and be all right with that, no matter who's around. Next, wholeheartedly seek feedback, guidance, and advice. If you make a mistake, admit to it and learn from it. Ask your coaches, advisors, and mentors, how can I improve, or what can I do to get better? If you run for an office and get it, ask, how do I need to grow so that I might best serve? If you didn't get elected, think, how can I grow regardless of the setback? Once we've done these things, we've crossed the threshold and chosen vulnerability. Don't quit. Fully embrace vulnerability for all that it's worth. Thinking back to that terrifying day where I got up and rapped in front of 500 people, I can vividly recall how scared I was. I'm surprised I didn't faint. But I also thank God for that moment, for in it, I've probably made the most important choice I've ever had to make. To lay down my defenses, unguard my heart, and be vulnerable. I can honestly say I would not have spent this past year with you had I not. I have to say thank you to people in my life who have challenged me to live with daily vulnerability. My family. Thank you for your open hearts and helping me see the value in being challenged. My teammates. Thank you for not letting me settle for anything less than excellence this year. My friends, advisors, and mentors. Thank you for always pushing me to become my best self. My friends in California FFA, thank you for opening up your lives to me this year and granting me this incredible chance to serve you. Soon we leave, and I ask you, how will you live differently? Will you keep your guard up, or will you embrace a life rich with possibility, opportunity, and growth? Think about the person you want to be someday and ask yourself, how will I get there? You each deserve the best life possible, so grow and be vulnerable. It will make all the difference.